Hello everybody, Darkside Phil here, and welcome to another edition of the Hateful Truth video game review series, where I give you maximum truth and minimum bullshit regarding the latest video game releases. And today we're going to talk about a game that is extremely polarizing amongst the mainstream gaming media, and I'm here to explain to you why I think this is, and give you my personal feelings on the game. The game itself had a lot to live up to. It is the next release from Quantic Dream, the same game studio that released Indigo Prophecy and the critically acclaimed Heavy Rain. It's definitely a follow-up to the direction that they were going with those games, okay? It's a game that attempts some things in a serious fashion for the very first time, to the point where I think that David Cage, who's the writer, the producer, the director of these series of games that he's been making, is trying to prove a point about games. Basically say that games are art. That he can show such a complex, gripping narrative in a game, but still add interactivity to it, that a video game can be an interactive work of art, alright? The game we're talking about today is called Beyond Two Souls, okay? And again, as I said, very polarizing when people come and talk about this game. It really seems people either absolutely love it, the story is outstanding, the characters are amazing, the graphics are photorealistic, music is great, 10 out of 10. On the flip side, you've got very limited gameplay, it's barely a game, don't like what David Cage did with it, Heavy Rain was better, 5 or 6 out of 10. And that's really what it's been. It's been a whole bunch of people loving the game and a whole bunch of people just kind of saying, it's barely a game, and there's design flaws, critical design flaws with the game that we're going to talk about, and so they're panning it. Now, first of all, what I have to say is this. When it comes to a game like Beyond Two Souls that's attempting to do something different for the very first time, if you are a reviewer, you have to understand that, and you have to review the game based off of that premise, alright? Because I think what a lot of reviewers did is they took their scoring system, alright? Now, we have the best scoring system, because everyone knows that a number is how you rank a game, not the actual review where I tell you about the game and I give you all the information and the content, and that's what you should base your judgment off of. No, you just want the number. And that's the sad state of reviews these days. People just want the number because they're fucking lazy and they don't want to watch a real intelligent review. So, that being said, Beyond Two Souls, in some regards, does amazing things. Gameplay is not one of them. Gameplay of Beyond Two Souls is almost non-existent in a lot of cases, although it's funny because those few gameplay choices that you may make during the game can completely change the outcome. Alright? Really, like literally. Like, the change you make could unlock a whole additional scene that you didn't even know existed, which then triggers something else in a later scene, which then at the end of the game can affect something. So, you may not realize it, but those few things, those few interactions that you do have, making choices, critical choices in the game, can actually literally change the course of the game. Excuse me. So, let's talk about Beyond Two Souls. What is the premise? What's going on? So, first of all, Beyond Two Souls is one of the few games that's actually cast real actors into the main roles. Now, I don't mean that voice actors, per se, aren't really actors. They are. But what I'm telling you is these characters are basically the same. They look exactly the same as their actors. Motion capture technology captured their motions for the scenes. And really, it's almost like they were acting the roles of these characters in the games. You've got Ellen Page, who plays the role of the main protagonist, Jodie, who is a girl who, basically, this game is the story of her life. She has always had this invisible entity tied to her who's named Aiden. And she doesn't know who he is, she doesn't know what he is, but he's always been able to communicate with her, even though she's the only one that can hear him talk. And he has abilities that sometimes Jodie can get under control, but other times Aiden just does what he wants. These abilities include telekinesis, floating, yes, she can make her float, a protective psychic barrier around her that could either help her land from a very high jump, or can actually allow her to plow through walls and stuff if she has enough momentum. He can possess people and actually take them over for a limited period of time. He can choke people and actually suffocate or kill them. Alright? So he's got quite a lot of abilities, plus electricity. He can actually control electricity as well. That's important to know. So he's got quite a lot of things that he can do. Now, it's funny because I'm calling him he, and over the course of the game you never really understand. Is it a he? Is it a she? Is it a person at all? Or maybe it's not. Maybe it's just an entity. And I'm not going to spoil because there is some resolution at the end of the game where you get your answer. Alright? But the story of Beyond Two Souls is the story of Jodie. And how she goes through life, how she's affected, how it affects her relationship with her family, with her friends, the people around her, how she uses her abilities for sometimes for good, sometimes for evil, depending on how you play the game and what choices you actually make, how eventually she's used by people as a mean to an end, and then of course all hell breaks loose at the end of the game. I'm not going to spoil for anyone because that's major plot spoilers that I could lay down right here to let you know more about the game and tell you how good the plot is, but I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to tell you is this. The plot of Beyond Two Souls is great. It's expert, high-level writing by someone who basically could have made this an ongoing TV series, an ongoing series of movies. It's that level quality writing. All right. Now Willem Dafoe is the other main actor in the game, and he plays Nathan Dawkins, who is a professor who is studying the supernatural and paranormal, and actually researches Jodie during her early years to try to figure out what is Aiden, what's the extent of her powers, can she control it, can he figure out what exactly is going on with her. And his role almost becomes as that of a surrogate father during the course of the game, and so he genuinely is concerned for Jodie, and over the game their relationship develops into different things as Jodie no longer is at this research facility and ends up going off and having her own life. All right. Over the course of the game, Jodie runs into so many different kinds of people. I mean, the homeless, you know, normal kids her age who she's trying to fit in with, and it obviously is awkward because she has this elephant in the room that's just invisible, Aiden. Later on in the game, she actually ends up doing some serious undercover stuff as an operative. But that's as far as I'm going to go with plot spoilers because I don't want to spoil anything else, alright? But that's just, people know that. If you've seen the trailers, you've already seen that. She's in body camo and stuff, so you would know that about the game, alright? And so, it's a supernatural story about this other side. What happens when you die? What is going on? Is Aiden an entity from the other side, or is he something else? And it's a very, if you suspend your disbelief and you believe the premise of the game, the story is great. Like I said, high-level sci-fi, thriller, supernatural kind of writing. You're on the edge of your seat for a lot of the game wondering what the hell's going on and what the hell's going to happen, okay? Now, let's talk about the gameplay of Beyond. Well, actually, before we get there, let's talk about the graphics. Look at this. Look at Willem Dafoe's face, alright? The game is freaking amazing graphically. The amount of detail on the characters, they are photorealistic at this point. They look real. They look like real fucking people, alright? And if this is where the graphics are going, and this is on PS3, keep in mind, if this is where the graphical engines are going with PS4 and Xbox One, we're going to have a generation of some insanity coming up. Because if you can make games look this good, you're going to blur the line between reality and fantasy, okay? So, the graphics are outstanding. The only complaint I have about the graphics, alright, it's choppy in parts. I think it tries to do too much, and especially if there's a high level of action going on, the frame rate can chop up a bit. It's never terrible where the game's unplayable, but it's there and it is an annoyance in certain parts of the game, okay? Now let's talk about the gameplay of Beyond Two Souls, because primarily the gameplay consists of three major things. You've got your action sequences. Now, action sequences are basically when Jodie is performing some kind of hand-to-hand combat or trying to defend herself, maybe trying to evade some enemy, or even maybe trying to dodge things that are coming at her or move quickly through an area, so she has to jump or roll or whatever. It's insanely simplistic. Literally, the action-based gameplay of Beyond Two Souls consists of either this, or tapping buttons or holding buttons down, similar to how you had to do in Heavy Rain. So, the action-based combat is incredibly simplistic. Now, how do you figure out what direction to push? You guess based off of what you see. So, if Jodie's running through a forest and all of a sudden there's a tree on the ground, she probably needs to jump. So you push up, and 9 times out of 10 you'll guess right. She'll jump over, alright? In hand-to-hand combat, you need to push the thumbstick in the direction that's the whatever is coming at you from. So if a dog is jumping from the right, push right, and usually she'll just, boom, whack the dog away. If you're doing hand-to-hand combat, someone goes to punch you and it looks like it's coming from your left, push left, she'll probably defend against it, okay? Now my complaint about this system is that it's not always straightforward. Sometimes the camera all of a sudden goes to a different angle and you're like, shit, is that left or right in regards to her? I can't tell. You'll press the wrong direction and that's it, you'll get hit, okay? Very similar to, say, do you remember the game Dragon's Lair? And a lot of you probably don't, or Space Ace. These were games in the 1980s and early 1990s that were actually arcade games that were later ported to CD consoles, where it would just be a scene, you have to guess what direction or button to push. If you did it right, you progress. If you did it wrong, you die and have to try again. It was just complete trial and error, and that's really what the combat of Beyond Two Souls is consistent of. However, there's a major flaw here, and the major flaw of that gameplay is that there's really no risk whatsoever. If you fuck up 100 times in a row, you don't die. You get hurt, but Aiden, who is this entity, has the ability to heal you. So even in the worst case, if you get destroyed and demolished by whatever's going on around you, you don't usually die. And I'm not even sure if you can die until the final stage of the game. And the reason I say that is through the entire game, I failed a lot and I never died, okay? Never had to restart until the last stage of the game. And this is a critical gameplay flaw of the game. Listen to this. If you die during the last sequence of the game, you get the bad ending. If you get the bad ending, you have to completely replay the entire chapter of the game, the final chapter from the beginning, which is about a half an hour of gameplay, and there's no ability whatsoever in this game to skip any sequences or cutscenes. So if you fuck up in the final sequence of Beyond Two Souls, you're going to see the bad ending, you're stuck with it, unless you replay the whole final chapter, which takes another 30 minutes, and obviously could be incredibly repetitive. You have to redo everything again. And that is, in my opinion, a major gameplay flaw with the game. I don't know what they were thinking there. What they should have done, okay, you die, bad ending, now replay a certain sequence, go to a checkpoint. And they don't do that, alright? But in regards to anything else, yeah, it's so easy to not die that I don't even know if you can die during certain sequences of the game. So in that regard, I can definitely understand when people are saying that the gameplay falls short, alright? If you're looking for challenge, this is not the game. I'll tell you right now, this is not the game. We're going to talk a little bit after I talk about the other gameplay of the game, about why I think the reviewers were so, polarized on this because of what they're looking for in a game, okay? There's two other modes of gameplay. There's a mode of gameplay where you're going to be forced with choices, dialogue options that possibly will lead to completely different outcomes. So for example, you may be in a situation where, someone asks you a question. You can either have a positive response, a negative response, or a neutral response. And depending on what you do, it'll change the dialogue, and sometimes it'll actually open up completely different options. So in one particular situation, Jody's trying to sneak out of somewhere, and if you answer the question one way, it just ends the scene. The scene actually ends, and that'll affect the outcome of the game. If you answer another way, it opens up a completely new scene that you might not have even known existed if you had answered the other way. So the game in that regard, similar to Heavy Rain, has lots of replayability. You will want to go back in this game, and you will want to replay scenes and do them differently and see the different options that come out and the different outcomes, alright? But that being said, unlike Heavy Rain, I think this is where a lot of people have issue with the game. It's not like if you make a choice, someone will die and they're out of the game forever in a lot of cases. In a lot of cases, it's more like you just, you might unlock an additional scene and it may actually have an impact later on in the game in some regard. So if something horrible happens to Jody in her past, maybe in the future she'll be less trusting of people, alright? Whereas if earlier in the game you prevented that horrible thing from happening to her, maybe she'll be more trusting of people later on in the game. And that's the kind of stuff that the entire, again, these little decisions can affect the entire span of the game. That's what they think we're going for here, an interactive work of art, an interactive story that is Beyond Two Souls. Now, the third and final type of gameplay that's in Beyond Two Souls is the Aiden gameplay. You might be saying, what does that mean? Well, there are certain portions of the game, it's most of them, by the way, in most of the game you can do this, by pressing triangle, you jump out of Jodie's body and you take control of Aiden, this spiritual entity that's somehow tied to her. And it's weird, you can actually see this almost umbilical cord coming out of yourself and going into her body, okay? Aiden, as I said, has all these spiritual abilities. Telekinesis, like I said, letting Jodie hover, manipulating electricity, possessing people, choking and killing people. He can do all these pretty crazy things, alright? But really when it comes down to it, the Aiden gameplay only consists of basically you floating around the world looking for little dots. When you see a dot, it means you can interact with something. In order to interact with it, you hold down L1, and then you're going to see 2 more dots on the screen. Either you pull back your thumbsticks and release to punch or strike something in front of you, or you're going to hold your thumbsticks away if you want to possess someone, which you can very few and far between can you do it, but when you can do it, it's really neat. You can then make that person go nuts. You can have them shoot people, kill people. Maybe they're driving a car, you can make the car go into a building. Maybe they're flying a chopper, you can crash the chopper. So there's this kind of possession gameplay to wreak havoc, mostly to protect Jodie, but sometimes Aiden is actually acting out by himself, and depending on what you choose to do, you can either have Aiden behave, or in some instances you can have him freak out, okay? And prove basically that he's not fully controllable by Jodie. And then if you hold the thumbsticks together, sometimes you could kill people by choking them, alright? And that's really the Aiden gameplay. Now, it's interesting because there are certain scenes where you can just mess around with Aiden and have him do silly stuff. It'll unlock additional dialogue, it'll unlock additional things. And there were scenes in the game where, based on how I played, whether Aiden behaved or Aiden just went apeshit, that they end completely differently, alright? And in that regard, I think the game, again, massive replayability. It shows that it's an interactive work of art. However, just listen to the gameplay I just mentioned. Moving a thumbstick around and or tapping or holding buttons, using Aiden to look for dots and do very minimal things, and dialogue choices. So that's all the gameplay of Beyond Two Souls. So if you're looking for a challenging, complex game in regards to the level of gameplay, this is not your game. In fact, you're probably going to be very disappointed. So now let's talk about what happened when people went to review this game. Oh, a professional level. Yeah, sure. What happened was this. There are some people that when they go into a game, they have an open mind. And what they're looking for is an entertaining experience. Alright? You don't have a fucking laundry list of check boxes that if they're not all checked, you say the game is bad. Alright? So if you go into this game looking for a game that's going to have an amazing story, exceptional acting when it comes to Jodie and Dawkins' characters because of Ellen Page and Willem Dafoe. And by the way, there's also an excellent supporting cast. They're not big names, but they do an excellent job as well. So by no means am I trying to say they're the only 2 that really do a good job. Everyone in this job is really good, okay? Everyone in this game is really good, sorry. Okay. So if you're going into the game looking for this emotional experience, you really want to learn about the story of a girl who really, as she grows up, has to go through some crazy shit because of some unknown entity. If you're looking for something that has a spiritual twist, alright? If you like that kind of supernatural, you're going to suspend your disbelief so that you get a really interesting sci-fi thriller story, this is the game for you. If you're willing to accept limited gameplay in exchange for a game that literally changes depending on what you say and do in the game, then you're going to love Beyond Two Souls. But if you're the kind of person that plays the game only for the gameplay, you're only looking for a certain number of hours of content, you're only looking for very challenging experiences, and I know for a fact there is a certain type of gamer out there that's what you're looking for. When you play a game, I want this game to challenge the hell out of me. I want to have difficult parts that I have to replay until I perfect them, and I want to have to, really figure out, what is the complexity of this game. The game's not complex. The gameplay is extremely simple. The gameplay is there simply to show there's a level of interactivity, and that based off of your choices, the game's plot will change, but not necessarily that you're going to die, that the story will stop, and there's a checkpoint, and then it resumes, and you know, like most other games. It's not like that. It's trying to break that mold, and instead of focusing on the gameplay, give you a complex, evolving narrative, okay? So I know what David Cage was going for with this game. I loved what he was going for. I think the game is excellent in that regard, but the game does have some flaws as well, which I've mentioned some of them, okay? So what I think happened when people went to review this game, you've got some people who are just looking for an entertaining game, and you're going to judge it for what it is, and if you had fun with the game, you rate it high. And so some people, I loved the story, I had a lot of fun with it, I went back, replayed certain scenes to see the different outcomes, it was really neat to see how it changed, I love the game. Versus a person who's like, well, I don't understand, this game only had, 10 hours of gameplay, there are other games this year that had way more gameplay, the gameplay that was in here was very limited, wasn't complex at all, wasn't challenging, you can almost never die, 5 out of 10. And it's like, well, wait a minute. I thought the way that you're supposed to rate a piece of entertainment is on if it was entertaining. Now, if you're going into a game with a certain mindset, a preconceived notion of what you're looking for, you fail. Because that's not. You're not always going to be able to play the same game. If you just want to play Grand Theft Auto 5 all day, you can play Grand Theft Auto 5 all day. But don't play Grand Theft Auto 5 all day, then go to play Beyond Two Souls and say, I don't understand. It doesn't have gameplay like Grand Theft Auto 5. It's like, well, you failed as a reviewer, because that's not your job. Your job is to review the game for what it is. Did the game have an entertaining factor to it? Absolutely. If you were actually paying attention to the story, it's not confusing at all. It actually makes a lot of sense, and in fact, that was a major thing with reviewers. They're saying the game was too confusing, because the chapters in the game don't go in linear order in a timeline. What happens is you may have a mission that's a chapter where she's young, then she's older, then she's middle, then she's young, then she's older, middle, young, older. It'll jump around, alright? And at first you may not know why it's doing that. I think it actually adds to the game because it actually makes you feel all these cliffhangers. Gee, she saw this one particular thing in this stage. I wonder if it'll be explained later, or maybe something in her past will explain what happened there. It's actually kind of interesting the way that they handle it, okay? But it actually happens that way for a reason. When you beat the game, the ending of the game explains why they did that. And I get the feeling a lot of the reviewers didn't even pay attention. They didn't pay attention to the ending of the game that literally, word for word, explains why the game was done like that. And it makes sense. And they're like, wow, that actually adds to the story of the game because of that. I think a lot of people just have a lot of trouble paying attention, really. And so if you didn't get this game, I don't understand, because I played it from start to finish. Not at one point was I ever confused. Alright? As long as you pay attention, you will understand everything in the game, and everything gets explained by the end. The last thing I want to say, the game has many endings. There's actually a major plot choice at the end of the final chapter of the game that lets you choose different things, and then based off of that plot choice, you have more choices. So far I've seen 3 of the endings for 1 of the plot choices. I still have yet to go back and do the other choice and then do other things. I don't know how many endings this game has, because I just haven't had time to go back 100 times to play it. But it's crazy the amount of replayability in this game. And that's the other thing I want to say. Everyone's complaining that the game's shorter than Heavy Rain. Wrong. I literally added up the hours that I played this game in my playthrough versus my Heavy Rain playthrough. This game was over 10 hours long just for one playthrough without me going back. Heavy Rain was under 10. It was like 9.5. This game, just playing it from start to finish, is longer than Heavy Rain. So everyone who's complaining that Heavy Rain was longer, they're lying. What it is their conception of time. Heavy Rain feels like a longer game because it's this ongoing murder mystery. This game can almost feel like it blows by in the blink of an eye, but it's actually quite a long and entertaining game. And just like Heavy Rain, it has massive replayability with your ability to go back, replay chapters, and see things completely change in the plot, and it's really neat to see that, okay? So, all things considered, alright, Beyond Two Souls is a great game. Do not pass it up because some group of critics who don't know how to properly review a game were looking for these preconceived notions of things that weren't in the game. David Cage was going for something different. He succeeded on that level. He created something very different from any other game I've played before. The only other game that's real similar to this is Heavy Rain, honestly, okay? But I've explained to you why it's different from Heavy Rain. So all that being said, Beyond Two Souls is a revolutionary, and I mean it, unique, one-of-a-kind experience that is to be enjoyed by people who have an open mind and who want an entertaining story, great graphics, and just riveting game. If you're looking for challenge, this is not where you need to go. There's plenty of other games out there that are very challenging, but that's not what you're going to get here. You're going to get simplified gameplay for the sake of plot exposition and narrative, alright? And you're going to get big replayability when it comes back to going back and replaying certain parts of the game to see how things happen differently when you replay them. It's not a perfect game. There are frame rate issues. Like I said, the gameplay is quite simplistic. The fact that you can't die in a lot of the parts of the game really is kind of a change. How many games can you not fail in? Let's think about that, alright? So there are some negatives in there, alright? But, for the most part, the game succeeds at what it's trying to do, alright? So I could see both the positive and the negative. I could say that the game could use a tiny bit more polish. A little bit of the dialogue seems forced. And I'll be honest, in some cases, even though you say completely different dialogue options, it does eventually lead to the same outcome. It doesn't always completely change the game, alright? But there are times when you do things differently, it will change the outcome of certain things in the game, but a lot of the times it doesn't. It's just kind of different dialogue options just for the sake of having them. No matter what you say or do, kind of the same things will happen, alright? So, a lot of people don't like that as well, and I can understand that. Maybe there should have been more there. Maybe they should have fleshed it out a little bit differently. It could have been a little bit more complex in that regard, alright? But it's a great game. It's a solid 10 hours for your first playthrough. You're going to get many additional hours of content going back and replaying the scenes. If you're looking for entertainment rather than challenge, this is your game. If you're looking for challenge, go elsewhere, alright? So Beyond Two Souls, all factors considered, alright? I'm going to give Beyond Two Souls a 9 out of 10, alright? It does have flaws. It's not a perfect game, but it's damn good. It's damn entertaining. For me, someone who's looking for entertainment, I fucking loved it. If you're looking for something else, you're probably not going to like it. If the gameplay and the challenge, skip it, alright? But for what David Cage was going for, I think he succeeded. I think that he could do a better job of making this more, I don't know, more accessible for more people who maybe are looking for more challenge. If he had made it that Jody dies, you have to replay sequences, it made it a little bit more difficult. Maybe more people would have liked it. But I understand what he was going for. It was story and the substance of the character and her plight over the gameplay, and he succeeded in making that gripping story as a must-play game. I give it a 9 out of 10. You might disagree, but for me, I loved it, and I think that most people would love it if they give it a legitimate chance and know what to look for going into it. Okay? So that is my review of Beyond Two Souls. I hope that you feel I gave you maximum truth and minimum bullshit on this edition of the Hateful Truth video game review series. Thanks a lot for watching, and I will see you next time. Peace out.